Now we're moving to the stratified epithelium, which would be having more than one cell layer. And we start with what we call keratinized stratified squamous. Keratinized stratified squamous. The cells that are on the apical surface are dead. They are dead because they get filled with a protein called keratin that waterproofs and makes the tissue more resistant to friction. And you're going to find this in your outer layers of your skin. So it can be several layers or just a few, starting with that bottom layer. And as the cells divide by mitosis and move up, because they're getting nourishment from the underlying connective tissue, they're going to get coated in that keratin and pushed upward, and then they're going to die, and it's going to flake off. That's why dry skin flaking off doesn't hurt us, because the cells are already dead. Now, there's also non-keratinized stratified, whoops, that didn't do right, did it? Non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, where the apical layers are still alive. It's not going to be nearly as thick as stratified keratinized squamous. You're going to find this in areas that have some abrasion and mechanical stress, but they have to stay moist. So you're going to find it in your mouth and your throat and your esophagus, the anus, and also the vagina is going to have that. So there's keratinized and non-keratinized. So you don't see the flaking off at the top like you did with the keratinized stratified squamous. The next type is stratified cuboidal. And it's going to have usually 2 or 3 layers of cube-shaped cells. It's rare in humans. We find it in our sweat glands, in the ducts. And you can see the basement membrane being around here, and the apical surface is here, okay? That's the apical surface of the cells. And you can see that they're shaped like cubes or boxes, and you got several layers. Stratified columnar, again, is rare for humans. It is a tall, thin cell. And it has layers at the bottom. See, here's the basement membrane. And layers at the bottom right here, they are more cuboidal shaped. But the top layer is going to be the simple columnar looking thing. So it's stratified because it's more than one layer, but the top layer is the one that's columnar. And as I said, it's very rare in humans. You find it in places like the male urethra, the cornea of your eye, and in some of the ducts of your salivary glands. So you don't see as much of it. The last type of stratified epithelium is transitional. And the only place you find it is in your urinary system, specifically in your bladder. And this tissue is going to be dome-shaped. You see how it's making these domes? When it's relaxed, the cells at the top are dome-shaped. Now, when it's not relaxed, like when your bladder is full and you really have to urinate, it's going to be flatter across the top, and that's not really a good picture of that either. But it's going to be flatter. The cells are going to stretch out. This is a characteristic of this tissue that no other epithelial tissue can do. It can stretch. And again, you see it as many layers. You see all the layers here, and the ones at the bottom are more cuboidal, but at the top they're going to be more dome-shaped unless the bladder is full, and then it'll stretch out and they're not as dome-shaped as they were. Then we need to talk about glandular epithelium, because glands are epithelial and they make and secrete a product from their cells. We can classify them by shape or by how they release the products. There are two main types of glands. There's endocrine glands that secrete inside, exocrine glands that secrete to the surface of the body. Now, endocrine glands secrete usually hormones into the bloodstream, no ducts. And they're going to have effects on distant cells because they go into the bloodstream. Exocrine release their products onto the apical surface of the epithelial tissue, and it can either be on the external surface of the body, or it can be, if it's a lining for in a lining of organ, it can go into that organ. The products are going to have if it's exocrine, it's going to go through a duct or a tube that is epithelial. And it's only going to affect that area where that secretion occurs. Now, we talked about goblet cells with our columnar epithelium. This is an example of a unicellular exocrine gland. And it secretes the mucus onto the surface, and then the cilia and so forth will spread it all over the surface. With your exocrine glands, you've got two methods of secreting. You have merocrine, that's things like salivary glands, sweat glands. And with merocrine, they package up the secretion into little vesicles, and then the vesicles, you see them here. You see the little vesicles? I need to get me a pen. You can see one here and here. My pen doesn't write real bold. I'm sorry about that. But then they will exit through the duct. Those little vesicles will. That's merocrine secretion. Holocrine secretion is like your sebaceous glands that secrete oil. And those cells that make that secretion will go out into this area and they will rupture. They get shed and they rupture, and so they go out with the secretion. Not just the secretion packaged up in a little package like a vesicle, like merocrine, but they are going out, the whole cell ruptures and goes out with the secretion.